Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anisha and thank you so much for joining me here today. Today I'm setting up some book review spreads in my reading journal for the books I read back in May. It's quite late, I know. I'm just trying to catch up now. Hopefully I'll be done before the end of the year. Anyway, let's get into it. So the first book I read in May was Anxious People by Frederick Bagman. Before I jump into my thoughts on the book, I just want to say I'm really sorry about the constant shift in lighting throughout the video. The weather here has been an unpredictable mess lately. One moment it is extremely hot and humid, and half an hour later there is a thunderstorm. I don't have a proper recording equipment. I mostly use my phone and depend on sunlight, so recording with this constantly changing light has been a task to say the least. Anyway, for the spread, I usually pick colors from the book cover and decorate the page using that palette. Sometimes I also do something related to the story or theme of the book, but sometimes it's just about matching the colors with the book cover. Since this book's cover is mostly red, I decided to go with the red washi tape as the border, and I'm pairing them with this printed paper here. I found this pattern on Pinterest and really liked it, so I printed it on a regular printer paper. It's mainly blue and white with red cherries on top of it, so I think it goes well with both the washi tape and the book cover. Later, I'll also add a couple of character stickers on the page. Those are some girl stickers I have. I have quite a lot of them actually, so I'll be using a few of them here for the spread as well. Here I used double side tape with the washi tape so I could stick the printed paper on top of it because it's hard to glue things directly onto the washi tape with just the glue stick. Then while applying the glue to my printed paper, I accidentally placed it on top of the double side tape, and of course it stuck immediately, so I kind of ruined the paper a bit here, but nothing unmanageable since I was already planning to rip the paper edges a bit so the washi border could peek through it. I was able to easily cover that small damaged area. It only tore a little bit at the corner, so overall it was fine, but lesson learned though. Now, about the book, the story begins with a failed bank robbery that turns into an accidental hostage situation during an apartment viewing. So, inside the apartment, a mismatched group of strangers find themselves trapped together, and as the hours pass, what starts off as a chaotic hostage situation slowly unfolds into something much deeper, a moving exploration of vulnerability, hidden struggles, and the surprising ways people connect. I went into this book with fairly high expectations, but not necessarily expecting to be blown away. It's such a popular book, so I thought it would be good, but I wasn't prepared for just how much it would move me. What I got was an emotional roller coaster, funny, witty, heartbreaking, and heartwarming all at once. My emotions were all over the place reading this in the best way possible. One of the things that impressed me the most was the characters. At the first glance, each of them seems like a type we have all seen before. So when they were first introduced, I thought I already knew who they were and how they would act. But as the story unfolded, I kept realizing how wrong I was. Each character became more complex, layered, and real, and it made me reflect on how often we judge people on first impressions. This book was a gentle but powerful reminder that everyone has a story, and what we see on the surface is only a fraction of who they really are. I especially loved the older couple and their backstory. It was one of my favorites, and it's genuinely surprised me in a good way. I had judged them a certain way early on, only to feel a little guilty when the book revealed their real struggles and their depth. Even the characters who seemed like pure comic relief at first, like Leonard in his ridiculous rabbit costume, ended up being surprisingly insightful and meaningful. Honestly, I ended up caring about all of those characters. Overall, I absolutely loved this book. It was both entertaining and deeply emotional, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. And I can't wait to continue exploring more of Frederick Backman's work after this. Now, moving on to my next read of the month, it was Morning Star by Pierce Brown. This is the third book in the Red Rising saga, the conclusion to the original trilogy. It's a fast paced sci fi series set in a futuristic society, divided by colors and ruled by the powerful gold elites. I'm not going to say a lot about the plot because this is the third book in the series, so I can't say anything without spoiling something. The book continues Darrow's story as the rebellion reaches its climax, with alliances, betrayals, and battles that decide the fate of the society. Like the previous books, it blends high stake action with deeper questions about loyalty, leadership, and the cost of revolution. I have been enjoying this series so much, and this book was no exception. That said, it's not my favorite of the three so far. For me, the first third of this book felt a little slow compared to the pace I had come to expect from the earlier installments. Like Red Rising and Golden Sun hooked me immediately with their twist, strategy, and action. But with Morningstar, it took a while for me to find the same rhythm. It's not that the book was bad at all, I just missed the non stop intensity at the beginning. But once the story really picked up, I was fully back in it. The strategy, the shifting alliances, the betrayals, and of course the action scenes, all of it was gripping as I hoped for. One thing I really appreciated was how the characters and their relationships ended up by the close of this book. We have followed them through such a long, difficult journey, and while I do miss some of the ones we lost along the way, I really like where the remaining characters landed. In particular, the complex dynamic between Darrow and Cassius. Their bond has been complicated from the very beginning, shifting between friendship, betrayal, rivalry, and uneasy alliances. I feel the way it finally resolved was both fitting and rewarding. The series as a whole has been such a wild ride, and I really admire how the author balances the explosive cinematic storytelling with the deeper themes about class, loyalty, and hope. I ended up rating this book a 4 star, and I definitely am planning to continue with the next part of the saga. But since this one wraps up the original trilogy, I'm happy to pause here a bit before diving into the follow ups. As for the page, I went with a simple approach. I just added some printed paper in the corner and then printed out a fan art I found on Pinterest onto sticker paper. That is the main decoration for the spread. Other than that, I kept it pretty simple. My next read of the month was The Turnout by Megan Abbott. This is a psychological thriller set in the world of ballet. It follows two sisters, Dara and Mary, who runs a ballet studio alongside Dara's husband Charlie. The studio is their life, but as they prepare for their big annual production of the Nutcracker, tension starts to arise when a new outsider disturbs the fragile balance between them. The story slowly transforms into a dark tale of obsession, rivalry, and family ties pushed to the breaking point. I went into this book completely blind. It was my first read by Megan Abbott, and honestly, the only thing I knew beforehand was that it fit a reading challenge I was doing. So I needed a book where the main character is a dancer. That's all I had to go on, and I think that made the reading experience even stranger. Strange, but in a good way. This book wasn't entertaining in the traditional sense, but it pulled me right away. It had a such unique, eerie quality that made me want to keep reading. The combination of ballad with the psychological thriller setup created an atmosphere that felt almost gothic, like a dark fairy tale. The rehearsals, the costume, the intensity of the art form, all of that was layered with tension and unease. It was haunting, claustrophobic, and weirdly mesmerizing. The characters were another big part of what made this book so striking. None of them felt real or relatable in the usual sense. They were complex, flawed, and at times completely baffling. I kept wondering what was wrong with these people and why were they making these choices. But that was also what kept me hooked. The characters were so strange and unpredictable that I couldn't look away. even when I didn't understand them, I was still intrigued by them. The story also jumps back and forth, showing glimpses from the past that slowly reveals family history and hidden secrets. That added to both the mystery and the gothic tone. I loved how the book built layer by layer, giving me just enough information to keep me curious while still leaving me unsettled. The only downside for me was the climax. I wasn't the biggest fan of how it wrapped up. The ending didn't fully land for me, but that didn't take away from the overall reading experience either. So, overall, this was a weird, dark, atmospheric read, and I mean weird in the best possible way. It's not comfortable or straightforward story, but it was definitely interesting and intriguing. To be honest, I'm still a bit confused about my rating for this book. The way I was pulled into the story makes me feel like it deserves a higher rating, but there were also parts that made me feel very weird in a way that pushed me towards a lower rating. So, in the end, I just gave up and decided to go with 3 stars, something in between, I guess. That doesn't mean the book was bad. I actually enjoyed the reading process. It was just a very weird read for me. As for the page, as I said, this book has a very dark, gothic fairy tale kind of vibe. So I decided to go with that for the decor. I had this PET tape which I think matches the vibe and also goes well with the book cover. And since the two sisters are the main characters, I decided to use these two girl stickers here on the page as well. They're actually part of a celestial PET tape set I already had, and I think they really match the overall atmosphere of the book. My next read was The Man in Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. I decided to go with a simple one-page review for this one. This is a standalone novel, follows a young woman named Anne Bedingfeld who dreams of adventure and suddenly finds herself right in the middle of one. After witnessing a suspicious death in London and stumbling across a cryptic clue, she impulsively follows the trail, which takes her on a ship bound for South Africa. What begins as a simple mystery quickly turns into a web of murder, smuggling, and international intrigue, all seen through the lively and curious perspective of Anne. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan and I have been slowly working my way through all of her works. I think I'm about halfway through her backlist at this point. This one was another interesting read, but I would say it fell somewhere in the okay category for me. There was nothing particularly wrong with it. It has her classic style, and with a young heroine who stumbles into danger and decided to pursue it. But I have seen her use this pattern before, and I think it's been handled a bit better in some of her other books. One thing I always notice with Christie is how often there is a romance subplot tucked in somewhere, even when it's not the main focus. That pattern shows up here as well. And also, towards the end, the action felt unusually cinematic for a Christie novel, almost like an over the top fight scene. That really surprised me since I don't usually expect that style from her, and I'm not sure I completely liked it. Overall, this was a decent read, engaging enough but not one of my top favorite from Christie. I ended up rating this a 3.5 star. As for the page, I went with a simple one-page setup using some washi tape and stickers. I continued the washi tape towards the right hand side and tried to repeat a similar style there for my next read with some washi tape and symbol sticker. So my next book was 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think by Brianna Wiest. This is a non-fiction self-help book made up of 101 short essays, each focusing on a different idea about self-awareness, growth, mindset, and perspective shifts. The essays cover everything from emotional intelligence to breaking unhelpful patterns, and the goal is to challenge the way you think about yourself and your life. Personally, I wasn't a huge fan of this book. To be fair, nonfiction is not my go to genre, and even within nonfiction, I have barely read self help books. I think I'm starting to realize it is just not really my thing. While reading this, I didn't find much that helpful or relevant to me. A lot of the time, it felt like the author was making assumptions about my life or my struggles and then offering advice on how to fix them. But my life is not anything like what she was describing to begin with, so the advice felt mismatched and didn't apply to me at all. I can definitely see how this book might be valuable for certain people, especially those who identify with the situations the author writes about. But since I didn't fall into that category, I couldn't connect with it in the same way. It just felt like I was reading advice for problems I don't have, and that made it hard to engage with. Overall, this was not a bad book, it just was not for me. I ended up giving this a 2.5 stars. Moving on to my last read of May, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. For the spread, I already printed out some fan art images and maps that I found on Pinterest. I also have these printed papers with bluish pattern that I am planning to use in the spread as well. As you can probably tell, I really enjoyed this book and I wanted to do a more elaborate spread for it. So that's what I am doing here. I actually skipped a couple of pages ahead because first I am trying to create a centerpiece. So this image is going to be the main focal point for the spread. Here I'm cutting it in half before sticking it onto the page because the sticker paper I'm using is quite thick, and if I don't cut it, I wouldn't be able to close the book properly. So what I'm trying to do here is, I want this image to be the centerpiece right in the middle, and then both the maps I showed earlier will go on either side, kind of like peeking through from the next pages, and my written review will go around all that. It probably doesn't make much sense the way I'm explaining it right now, but please stay with me. You'll see what I mean in a moment. For the color theme, I'm mostly going with black and white, and later I'll be adding bluish printed papers as accents. The book cover of the edition I have is mostly white with black and blue accents. So I wanted to match that look here too. That's why I selected this color palette for the spread. Now about the book. As I said, this is the first book in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. It is set in a world ruled for 1,000 years by an immortal Lord Ruler. Here, the skies rain ash, the nights are filled with mist, and the society is divided between enslaved Scar and the powerful nobles. The story follows Win, a young Scar girl who discovers she is a Mistborn, someone who can use all powers of allomancy, which is a magical system based on ingesting metals. She joins Kelsier, a charismatic rebel, and his crew as they plan a daring uprising. At its core, this book works as a haste story while also weaving in rebellion, political intrigue, and a unique magic system. I absolutely loved this book. This was my first time reading a Brandon Sanderson, and it had been sitting on my shelf for a long time. I was both intimidated and excited before starting it. On one hand, the sheer size of the book and Brandon Sanderson's reputation as one of the most celebrated fantasy authors right now made me really nervous to start this. On the other hand, I really wanted to love this book. I wanted to dive into a long series that I could take my time with. So it took me really some time to finally pick it up. But once I started, I was completely hooked. The world building was incredible, and the setting of the Final Empire was really fascinating. What stood out most to me was the magic system itself. The idea of allomancy, where each metal gives different power, was so unique. Maybe it's been done somewhere else, but I personally hadn't read anything like this before, and I really enjoyed how it was explained and used throughout the story. The way Sanderson lays out the rules make it both easy to follow and endlessly interesting. I also like how the magic itself doesn't make the character invincible. The metals works more like tools or weapons. You still need the right ones at the right moment to survive. Just having power doesn't mean you can win easily. There are mystics who can use only one metal and even they can stand against a Mistborn under the right conditions. And there are even trained fighters especially prepared to face the Mistborns. So even though the Mistborns are powerful, the battle still felt like a real struggle rather than an easy win, and I found that really interesting. While it's clear that there is an overarching story for the whole series, the first book is at its core a haste story, with Kelsier and his crew planning their rebellion. I loved Kelsier. He became one of my favorite characters instantly. The crew was so much fun to follow, clever, entertaining, and memorable. But at the same time, I was never fully sure who to trust since they are all thieves and criminals at the end of the day. Seysoth was another favorite, such a gentle, thoughtful character. I really hope to see more of him in the rest of the series. Win herself was a great protagonist. At first, I had a small grudge about her being so young since I don't usually like the all powerful teenage hero drop. But with Win, it really worked. She didn't instantly become the leader or the smartest person in the room. She was powerful, yes, but also naive. She made mistakes and survived largely because she was surrounded by experienced people like Kelsier, Caesar, and rest of the crew. That balance made her growth feel believable and rewarding for me. The romantic subplot with Ellen was not my favorite part, mostly because romance isn't really my go to genre. But it was handled lightly and it didn't overpower the main story, so I didn't mind it. What I did enjoy was the small mystery thread woven into the book, the snippets of old journal entries, and the hints about Lord Roller's original powers. That added an extra layer of intrigue and kept me thinking about the bigger picture behind the world. Overall, the final empire was everything I hoped for and more. It gave me a world I could slowly sink into, characters I genuinely cared about, and a story that was both thrilling and engaging. By the time I finished, I knew I had found exactly what I was looking for, a vast, exciting series I can savor one book at a time. I really wanted to give this a full 5 stars, but I ended up giving this a 4.5, mostly because I was just saving that extra half star in case the next book somehow manages to even be better. It's a silly reason, I know, but in my mind, it's pretty much a 5-star read. So that was the last book I read back in May, and I'm really happy with how the spread turned out. This is one of my favorite spreads I have made this year so far, other than Babel, I would say. If you have watched my book review spreads for February, I'll link it somewhere here. That one had a similar setup for Babel, and I think that spread and this one are my favorite of the year so far. And both Babel and Final Empire are definitely two of my favorite reads of the year as well. So now let's do a final flip through. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. As you can see, I'm finally done with this journal. I'll be posting an overall flip through of this completed journal very soon. So please check out my channel for more journaling content. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.